Hello folks, Trouble T-Cat here, and welcome to my review of Elite Dangerous 2.1 Engineers Update. This is not going to be a full review of ED in a certain sense. It's mostly just a review of the updates in this patch to see if I can yet change my previous sort of comments on this game not really being recommendation worthy. I will mention at the start of this review, I'm using a custom reshade configuration that I made myself. I may talk about more in a future video. So the lighting and stuff like that you see in this video is a little bit different from what you would see if you bought the base game yourself. Anyway, moving on. The big ticket feature of this latest update is Engineers, hence the name of the update, 2.1 Engineers. So we'll start there. We'll start by talking about the Engineers. They are good and bad. In terms of the good sense, they add more of a feeling of attachment to individual ships because you spend time working on and tuning your particular ships. Like the Engineer feature, basically, there are these characters around the galaxy that you can fly to and meet, and will work with you if you fulfill certain conditions. And they can modify modules on your ship. For example, they might make your power distributor more balanced towards powering your weapons at the cost of powering your shields and your engines a little bit less. Or maybe it increases the DPS on your guns but the cost of reduced power load. Those kinds of tweaks to modules. And so that can be good in a few senses. It adds a bit more of a feeling of attachment and uniqueness to individual ships. It adds another form of progression to the game that it's more of a kind of a longer term thing. At least, I don't know, that's the way I address it. Some people are talking about like, oh man, I just went out and grinded for 1 billion hours in one go to get all my engineers to rank 5 and get all the best upgrades. I don't think that that's how it's intended to be played. For me, it's more so, it's like, oh, I'll keep an eye out for these materials as I'm going across my galaxy journeys and see if I can find this stuff. So it gives me a bit of a longer term kind of feeling of goals and progression, and adds just this little bit of extra context and flavor to the things that I'm doing because I have a little bit of a different motivation for them. So that's cool. There's some bad stuff about Engineers too, though. It's very heavy on the RNG. I haven't found this to be as big of a problem as some people on the forums are making it out to be, but it does mean that it can be a little bit frustrating when you've gone and found these materials and stuff like that, and you come back and you just get something that's kind of rubbish. And in fact, even when you get a good roll on the RNG, the upgrades don't feel as rewarding as they should, to me personally, at least not at the low tiers. Probably the higher tier upgrades feel better, but I'm not going to be getting any grade 5 upgrades for a while. The lower tier ones just, I mean, I like getting them, but they don't feel as rewarding as they should, in my opinion. And I also think that the method of increasing the relationship with Engineers, where you basically are forced into buying a shitload of things that you don't want in order to upgrade your reputation so they'll sell you better quality modifications, is a bit rubbish. Apparently you can also upgrade your reputation with them in other ways, but this is not explained through the in-game UI. So I don't know, like, if you don't go and browse on the forums at the moment, you're just not going to know that, for example, some of them you can turn in exploration data to increase reputation rather than grinding out these modules. It's just not explained in game, which is also stupid. So the big ticket feature of the Engineers is not it could be. It's not the worst, but it's definitely not the best either. However, to me, there's much more important things going on in this update. There are really big improvements to missions, and there's also a lot of quality of life improvements in other aspects of the game. I'll start by talking about the missions there. The missions feel much more connected to the world now. You got, like, when you take a mission, you have, like, a portrait of the faction contact who's giving you the mission. These portraits are ugly as sin for the most part. They look terrible, but it's still nice to have them there, you know, plus it's kind of funny. They seem to have fixed a lot of bugged mission types. They've also introduced some new bugs on certain missions, but I personally haven't experienced these yet. It's just based on what I've read on the forums, so it hasn't hurt my experience personally too much. Finding what you need for missions feels a lot more natural and is less of a crapshoot. Like, you can actually go to a nav beacon now and scan a nav beacon, and it'll tell you the area of space that you need to be in to find what you need for the mission, whereas previously you just sort of flew around at random and hoped you found a signal source. You now can actually find what you want through a way that feels a bit more intuitive, and it gives nav beacons a purpose, which is good. I think the main thing... Also, the missions feel a little bit more dynamic. You get occurrences of like, hey, can you deliver this somewhere else instead, and stuff like that, and it's no more of that, hey, drop out a super cruise and talk to me, and then you get offered like 2,000 credits to fucking piss off the faction who initially gave you your mission. The rewards for them are much better scaled. The missions themselves are much less stupid. They feel a lot more dynamic. The missions are massively improved across the board. For me, the most important thing is that you get much better context information provided about who you're working for, what the faction is, what their long-term goals are, what their situation is, and why they want you to do this mission. It really just improves the feeling of connectedness with the galaxy, which has been one of my major complaints about the game, is it just hasn't been immersive enough and engaging enough for me to really get into it strongly. And these mission updates, I think, really do improve on that point a lot. There's also a lot of smaller improvements to the game. There are small visual improvements across the board. The game never looked bad. It never looked mind-blowing either, and it still doesn't. It still looks good. It looks better now than it ever has previously. I've had a massive performance improvement on planets. I used to get, like, sub 60 on planets all the time, and this was after I already had to turn down a bunch of settings that I had up before the release of planets. Most notably, I had to turn off my super sampling. This new patch, I've got super sampling back on, and my performance on planets is better than it was previously with super sampling off. So I've had a really big performance improvement, and the planets also look better. So they did a really good job in that regard. And also, lots of quality of life stuff. Galaxy map bookmarks are useful, so you can put these bookmarks on the galaxy map now, so you can find your way back to locations that you really like very easily, or you can use it to plan routes and stuff like that. That's really useful. They improved the UI for outfitting, which used to drive me fucking insane. I hated the UI for outfitting. It's better now. It's still a little bit awkward. There's too many clicks sometimes to find what you're looking for, and I feel like it could still be improved, but it's definitely drives me less insane now than it previously did. What else? Oh, space traffic control, you guys! Space traffic control. When you go to a station or something, you get somebody like talking to you on the radio, saying like, "Welcome to our station, Commander. Please observe safe speeds," and they tell you like what docking thing you should go to and stuff like that. It's a small feature to a lot of people, I think, but for me, as I said, it's just a massive boost to my immersion, which is something that I've really wanted out of the game. They added dogfighting near planet surfaces, which is one of my complaints about planetary landings, is it was stupid. There was no dogfighting near planet surfaces, which in fact brings me to AI improvements, which is just the AI is improved across the board. In my opinion, the AI is still a bit too easy. I still, often feel too much like I'm farming my crops when I'm fighting the AI, rather than feeling like I'm really fighting a dynamic opponent pilot. That said, there's a large contingent of extremely angry, like just mad as hell, butthurt people on the forums who would say that, like, how could I say the AI is too easy? Because there's been this massive explosion of anger on the forums, people saying like, "Oh, my A-rated Anaconda's shields were down in 10 seconds fighting an eagle. It's impossible to survive for more than 2 seconds in any kind of dangerous situation now, and you can't." And all I can say to that is just that it's not been my experience at all. I don't consider myself a very good combat pilot. I'm only competent ranking in the game, so I'm not that experienced. I have almost no PvP experience, and every time I've flown in PvP, I've been completely fucking wrecked. I do not consider myself at all to be a good combat pilot in this game, but I'm able to take a Viper Mark IV, which is a fairly low-ranking ship, to a high-intensity combat zone and hang out there for 20 minutes, half an hour, and do some missions without it being a real problem for me. I can still take on much bigger ships than mine in a smaller one and stuff like that. It's just been fine. It's just been completely fine. Some of the complaints are specifically saying that it nerfed the effectiveness of very large ships in combat. I don't know about that because I don't fly large ships, personally. Maybe that's true. I'd say it's more likely that probably the people in those large ships need to adjust their tactics. Like, I mean, I was still finding when I was fighting large AI ships, they were still able to tank my attacks for a long, long time. I don't know. I can't comment on the large ship combat, I suppose, but overall I've found the AI to be a little bit better, still not as good as I would like. The idea that the game is, like, impossibly difficult now or anything like that is absolutely ludicrous to me. I simply don't know why the fuck everyone is so mad. Anyway, moving on, I felt the need to address that because it's a bit of a stink about that. So what's the verdict? For me, I mean, overall, 2.1 feels like a huge step in the right direction. All this stuff to add to immersion. Engineers do start in terms of adding, like, a little bit more of a longer-term hook or goal to the game. It's a start in the right direction. Just, yeah, immersion, quality of life improvements, missions improvements. I think I covered all the main stuff that just really did improve the feel of the game for me in a lot of ways. I do think it made a big difference, this latest patch, and I think for people like me who already play the game sporadically and stuff, it's making my sessions with the game more enjoyable, which is nice. However, it's the same but that I've ended every other one of these videos with. However, I still feel that the game is missing a real sort of hook to draw players in and really make the game feel special. It's still just not as immersive and engaging as you'd hope. Missions are better, but they're still extremely repetitive, and any other task is even more repetitive. And I mean, there's a fun to be had in the game as it stands, certainly, and I would recommend it for hardcore genre fans, although you have to be sort of patient. Like, I've got, I don't know, something like 400 hours in game now, and probably like 40 of those I was having a blast, and the rest were kind of dull. Not like painfully boring, but kind of dull. So it remains to... It still has this feel of just feeling kind of empty. It's getting better all the time, and I really want to be able to recommend it to people and say we've hit the point with ED where it really nails it, really gets there, but we're not there yet. We're just not there yet, but I think this is the biggest step in the right direction FDev have ever made. There's just huge improvements to every aspect of the game across the board. I would at this point say, if you can pick up a copy of the game with Horizons for somewhere in the area of $30, like around there, I would say it's probably going to be worth it if you're interested in space games, which is the best recommendation I've given for the game yet. Is I wouldn't say it's worth paying $60 for the Horizons version of the game, but I would pay $30 for it probably. I would recommend it at that price point. As for recommending it for its full $60 price tag or whatever it costs, maybe when Season 3 drops, you know, it'll be worth it for the game plus Horizons plus Season 3 to pay that kind of price. I will definitely be buying Season 3 because I think that although the game remains hard to recommend in a certain sense, it's getting better all the time, and it's good to see a game progressing. Yeah, it is good to see the game progressing. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the 2.1 version of Elite Dangerous. As I said, it's still a hard sell in a lot of ways, but the game is definitely improving, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what FDev does in the future. I'll have some more ED videos out soon, just because I've been playing the game a lot lately. It's kind of rough time for me at the moment with university. I've got all kinds of assignments and exams and stuff coming up, but in the next few weeks, you'll be seeing a lot more videos from me on this, and also my Dark Souls 3 walkthrough coming up very soon. Anyway, thanks for watching, folks, and I will see you next time. Trouble T Cat out.